Happy Wednesday, Penn State fans. It's a hour delayed edition of the BWI Live Wednesday show. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I am Greg Pickle, and we took an hour delay to bring you the latest from James Franklin's introductory news conference at Virginia Tech. He was, of course, named the Hokies head coach back on Monday. They introduced him in Blacksburg on Wednesday morning. And T. Frank, I'm having a little bit of deja vu because a lot of the things James Franklin talked about either wanting, getting, or having at Penn State are among the things he talked about either knowing it's already there or that's been committed to him as part of the reason why he is the new Virginia Tech head coach.
What, you mean 5 weeks of being laid off didn't forever revolutionize James Franklin's view on the world that's built over 50 years? Yeah, shocking. The part that got me was the hi, David. Hi, David. Hi, David. It's been 11 years. We have not had that in a while, but if for anyone who's around the beginning of James Franklin's tenure would not answer a question unless you said hello first. That is a part of the Franklin aesthetic of the back and forth with the media.
Right. So anyway, James Franklin now the new head coach at Virginia Tech. No contract details out for him as we talk at 11:09 Eastern time on Wednesday, November 19th. But we're going to get into that. Of course, we're going to shift the focus back to Penn State then and its coaching search. The Nittany Lions do have 2 more games left to play, of course. They'll be hosting Nebraska on Saturday. T. Frank and I have taken some time to jump into the Cornhuskers film. So we'll talk about that, wrap up with some best bets and some other thoughts on this edition of BWI Live. I want to lead things off here. What was the most interesting thing you heard, and maybe the most relevant to Penn State thing that you heard from from James Franklin that included talk about Brent Pry? First 60 minutes in front of the public as the head coach at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, so James Franklin talking for there was a very familiar feel of everything. There's that tingle in the back of your spine of just the familiarity of everything. Speaking for roughly 40 minutes. Terry Smith has been speaking for roughly 20 minutes. So it was like back into the same cadence. But I think the most important thing for Penn State fans is how he addressed team building with this particular situation this year. So like just to give you, I tried to cut the comments down a little bit, and these are courtesy of Virginia Tech Athletics, by the way, the video here, and I'll make sure that that's noted on the screen as well. But basically, he's going to build the program the exact same way, except maybe for year one. So here's what he had to say.
Because it doesn't make sense for us to ask these young people to walk away from significant money. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to build it with high school recruits. We're going to complement that with the portal. But I also think in year one, we're going to have an opportunity to maybe use the portal this year in year one, probably different than we will in other years. So we'll do that. I just think you have to be careful. If you are a portal team, you live by the portal, then every year you're going to have to live by the portal.
So basically what he said is year one is going to be a little bit different, and to me that screams we're going after the Penn State roster in the transfer portal. Like that makes too much sense. Like there's a lot of guys from Virginia on the Penn State roster that might be interested in following their former head coach to Blacksburg. So that was one thing we've talked about of like, will he, somebody was asking like, could there be contract language from the settlement of the buyout that prevents him from doing that? And it's like, you cannot take the free will away from these players. Like they've sued multiple times on that. These are like settled lawsuits that you can't impinge player movement. And it's just, it takes conversation, maybe not even a conversation, just an understanding of like, hey, they are going to make those decisions if they want to. And it sounds like for the most part, it's going to be targeted at former players from the Nittany Lions. So like, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing from a direct tactical off-season in the next 3 weeks, something that might happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So the portal does not open, of course, until January 2, but within 2 weeks' time as we get into the post-regular season and into the actual postseason. Obviously, we don't know where Penn State will be at that point in terms of whether it will be in a bowl or not. It has to win its final 2 games. But even though the portal does not open, T. Frank, until January 2nd, you're going to see a lot of declarations across the country, not just at Penn State, of guys saying that they are going into the portal or intend to enter the portal, so on and so forth. The language irrelevant because the action will be what it's going to be, which is, of course, going into the portal. So, yeah, James Franklin will certainly be building his Virginia Tech roster with some guys currently on the Penn State roster. He's also going to build a staff with some guys currently, or at this moment, some formerly now, on the Penn State staff. So no great shocks here, but some updates on that front. Kevin Throkel, who was the chief of staff for James Franklin for the last, I believe, 4 years, but he's been with James for a very long time. He is now moving to Virginia Tech with James Franklin. Andy Frank, who was the general manager at Penn State, is moving on. And then some recruiting and the NIL staffers are doing the same. Aeneas Hawkins, who's, of course, a Penn State letterman, Rashad Elby, Chris Mann, and Brett Arnold, all moving on. And they won't be the only ones, of course, to make the move from from Penn State to Virginia Tech. They are the first ones, though, to help James Franklin get running, off and running with his roster retention and management and recruiting work, because I do think it's worth noting, T. Frank, and this came up over on the Lions Den message board where you could have been following this all live with us and fellow Penn State fans. But Philip Montgomery is still the interim head coach of Virginia Tech for the next 2 games. And he is what's the best way to put this? On-field boss of Virginia Tech football. And James Franklin is handling pretty much everything else at this point in time.
That's an interesting dynamic that I have not really soaked in. Like, obviously James Franklin isn't going to come in and start being the game day head coach, because like that would be an improper process, and I don't think James Franklin would be a guy who would do that. And he said all those things, but like also that would be wildly crazy for him to just start coaching at the end of the season. It's just, that is an interesting dynamic for all the things that are going on behind you. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Beaver Stadium, where they're playing in Beaver Stadium and yet they're renovating at the same time. Like there's a little bit of that in that particular conversation. And I think you mentioned, like, just to underscore, like all the off field assistants, all the support staff for Penn State are the first that we're talking about here. I'm curious as to, like, I don't know how the contracts work for coaches. I mean, obviously they have to coach through the season, but is this the first wave of assistants? Is there another wave of assistants and analysts that are going to be part of the staff? I don't know how the analysts specifically, like, their contracts are worked out, because, like, are they considered on-field coaches? Are they tied to the, through the season? How much more are you expecting, Greg, on that front?
Yeah, there will be more. Obviously, James Franklin, I'd be shocked, and I think anyone listening would feel the same way. I would at least hope so. But I'd be shocked if a couple of the position coaches on this Penn State staff do not end up in Blacksburg with James Franklin. At least one, possibly more. But certainly I'd be stunned if his brand new Virginia Tech staff did not include at least a couple guys from his current group of Penn State position coaches. And then on the analyst front, it's interesting because more and more in college football, those guys are tied to the coordinators, and more so than a head coach. So I'm not saying that none of those guys will decide to move on. But certainly, you look at some of the guys Jim Knowles brought in and who Andy Kotelnicki brought in, and those guys are tied to them, not to James Franklin. So, we could see some analysts obviously move on. The new coach, whoever that will be at Penn State, will certainly bring his own with him, and maybe he'll want to keep some of the people who are still around. We'll have to wait and see. But I think at this point, the key for James Franklin is getting as many of those, administrative recruiting portal people there as possible to help with his pursuit of building a 2026 roster, starting with signing day in about 15 days. But James Franklin did thank Penn State. I know a lot of Penn State fans were questioning whether or not he would do that. He did. Yeah. Chief Frank has the video. Let's watch it.
I want to.
Oh, we pressed it at this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we did.
Yep, go ahead.
No, you got it. I've got something else.
I want to thank Penn State. I had 12 years there. It's very unusual in college football to get 12 years at a place. Most importantly, the relationships, the staff, the players. The players here at Virginia Tech are going to find out I'm a player's coach.
Yeah, I mean, what you would expect him to say, I think, without question. Certainly he's not going to stand there and toss love at Pat Kraft and, the people who had a hand in his dismissal that led him to Virginia Tech. But certainly the players, the coaches, I guess probably the fan base to some degree as well. He gave thanks to at Virginia Tech. Question in the chat from... let's see here. Douglas Smith says, did Franklin ask for a better alignment at the press conference? Well, he did talk about alignment, and T. Frank cut the video for you. Let's listen to what he had to say about that.
Alignment. And the nice thing for me is I'm walking in here, and that alignment already exists. And now I'm looking to partner with these men and women to put Virginia Tech in the best position to be successful long term.
So yeah, alignment certainly did come up, T. Frank, as expected.
Yeah, he wasn't the first person to talk about it. The rector, the president, and the athletic director all spoke briefly before him. All of them mentioned, promised him our full support, financial commitment. They named it the Invest to Win initiative. 3 mentions of money before Franklin ever got there: alignment, investment, conviction, investment, 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 investment. They are leading with money. As much as James Franklin said he's not going to recruit leading with money, they are leading with money. And one thing I didn't clip, but I thought was interesting, he phrased it in a way that I don't know that we talked about here, because fans were tired of hearing it, but he said, it's not the things that you have, because everybody has those things when you're welcoming in a recruit. It's the things that you don't have that stand out. And so you basically, his compete on all fronts mantra came up again. So that was, I think all of these are a part of it, and get ready to hear a lot of construction equipment around Blacksburg. I don't know their facilities situation, but it's it's coaching, it's the investment in going up and getting the top assistants and being able to pay players. So those are the things that I think from his outline of the plan that everyone is expecting. Like, if you were following along with James Franklin, he didn't deviate much from the message. It's just he's wearing different colors at this point.
Right. And so we'll see what else James Franklin does as it relates to Penn State moving forward. Did talk a lot about Brent Pry, the former Penn State defensive coordinator turned Virginia Tech head coach, turned fired head coach, turned James Franklin confidant in his process leading up to taking the Virginia Tech job. So I know there's some restlessness in the chat to move on from this conversation. I don't have too many other thoughts on this, but I think we have one more video. Is that right, T. Frank? Do we have one more thing that...
we don't need to... It was...
Okay.
Basically what he said is what he learned at Penn State, and it's about 2 minutes, and he at no point says what he learned because he's not going to give away those details. But within it, and just generally the last thing that I think is interesting is at no point, and this is probably the thing he's not going to talk about, but at no point did he say like his approach to NIL is going to change. Now, he did say we have to be competitive with the other top programs, but we're not leading with money. All of those things are the same thing that he said previously. But in terms of what we discussed yesterday and the model and how he wants to build the program, and I offered the idea of, is one of the things he learned that every once in a while you do have to be aggressive with the money you spend to get the players that make a difference, and to not have this kind of all for one and one for all sort of NIL strategy. I did not hear him hint at that even. And that might be different. Like, again, that might be something he's not going to say out loud. I think that is going to be a problem for him if that is the case in how he continues to do things. Because we saw at a higher level of, he had built Penn State and he had, cajoled Penn State to do the things he wanted to do, right? To build the facilities out, to build the roster and the staff, the staff out. He does not have those things as of right now at Virginia Tech, as far as I know. And I don't know necessarily, again, like their facilities conversation, but if it's going to come down to Virginia Tech and the brand of Virginia Tech plus James Franklin's recruiting aura against money and other schools and their recruiting abilities, like I think he's going to find himself in the same situation. So, like, if that's not a tactic that he decides he's going to change the way he approaches NIL and the portal and the selective aggression in the portal, I think he's going to get the same results, and it's just going to be in Virginia and in the ACC and not in the Big Ten.
All right. Well, that is our chat. And again, I apologize. To those of you in the chat, I just guess I don't really understand. The former 12-year head coach of Penn State just had his first press conference, and I think it's relevant to you guys. You don't think so, but so let's move on to Penn State.
This is the largest audience we've had for the Wednesday show in a while. Like, people are tuning in, and just like it is the end of the last 12 years. This is part of our responsibility to give you this of it matters. The way he's going to conduct his business at Virginia Tech is going to matter. Also, it's the most important thing that happened in the college football landscape today, this morning, and it happened within our purview. So yeah, we're going to talk about it. Like, I understand that there is the direct feedback of the it feels like you're being tased, right, in the nards because of all the negative feelings. But, like, sometimes we have to eat vegetables. That's it.
All right. Well, let's get to the Penn State portion of today's show, or at least the direct portion of today's show. Penn State, of course, continues its search for the next head coach. This is day 38, I believe, of Pat Kraft's coaching search. The Nittany Lions obviously will finish out the year with interim head coach Terry Smith leading the charge for Saturday's game against Nebraska, and then also for the regular season finale at Rutgers. As it relates to this Penn State coaching search, again, I think that I won't say his name, but what we all just talked about and what we saw this morning is an important reminder that the way Virginia Tech was going to go about its coaching search is different than the way UCLA is. Those were the two programs that opened first, UCLA and Virginia Tech, at the Power 4 level. And UCLA is still waiting to find the right fit. Obviously, it looks to be in a similar boat to Penn State in terms of needing to wait at least until the regular season ends to make a decision. If it does, and it could need more time than that. And I think that, clearly that was always going to be the expectation. And I know that it's been frustrating for a lot of Penn State fans to wait and watch and try and figure out who the next coach is going to be and wait. And, impatience is probably the word I would use. And I don't necessarily blame them. But also that was always going to be the reality of this situation, that Penn State would need time to, whether it had, a top target and a 1 of 1, or whether it had a 1 of 5, or whatever you want to call it. Guys aren't typically leaving college football playoff bound teams prior to the end of their playoff run. Now, Lane Kiffin may prove us all wrong here a little bit, to be frank.
I said that was the most ridiculous thing possible. And then, of course, Lane Kiffin is the person to do the most ridiculous thing possible. Although, like you just said, you don't get a lot of chances to make the college football playoff and to try and win a national championship in a coach's career. I know that there's one every year and everyone feels like it's inevitable the same teams are going to get in there. But if you're Lane Kiffin and it's Mrs. Ole Miss, no, you don't get that opportunity all the time. They haven't gotten it yet. I don't believe they've been in the CFP at this point. So the point is not to go to the next job to win a national championship. The point is to win the national championship.
Right.
And if you can do that where you are, then don't leave. But if you don't think you can do that where you are, then you leave. And so until you can't do it there this year, there's no point in leaving. So there is the starting date on the coaching search happened in October, but the starting point of actually being able to hire a coach starts in 2 weeks, right? At the end of the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. And I think that, again, that was always going to be the push and pull for Penn State fans and for us in the media following this search, that there's going to be things that come out, things you hear, things that happen. But a lot of them, as it relates to specifically Penn State pursuit of its next head coach, are going to be of the negative variety in terms of extensions elsewhere, in terms of guys taking jobs that maybe were thought of as Penn State candidates or on the hot board like we have over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. So that was always going to be the reality of the first 45 to 50 days of this thing when Pat Kraft decided to make the move that he did. When he did was, unless you were going to hire somebody who's currently unemployed for whatever reason, be it they were fired already this year or they took time off from being let go or leaving their current job last year, certainly this was a situation you were going to find yourself in where the week after the regular season ended was going to be busy in terms of seeing where this thing was ultimately going to go. So we're almost there. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, I think there's been a little bit of a loss among the Penn State fan base about the reality of how long this thing was going to take from the moment Pat Kraft made the decision that he did in the middle of October.
Yeah, you're like you just said, you've got to hire a sitting head coach to improve the situation for the most part. The whole idea of Nick Saban is a pipe dream. I know that he says nice things on TV about Penn State, but that's political. That's more about the being on TV of it than it is actually his view of Penn State as a viable program to win a national championship. And I don't know what that is. I don't know any of his opinions about that. He also famously retired so he didn't have to deal with NIL. So there's very little incentive for a former head coach who has already decided to leave to join back into the fray. And I know the Urban Meyer thing, that was never going to be a good fit here. So it's going to be a coach that's coaching. And if you this has been the rub of it. And somebody just mentioned Kalen DeBoer in the chat. If he loses one more time at Bama, Kalen DeBoer is feasible. Yes, that is absolutely true. And so now you're rooting for your coach, your next coach, to lose games, lose big games, so that you can hire him. And I know that
Right.
this is the same thing we've been talking about for 3 weeks now, but it is just it's a mind-blowing, convoluted dissonance that is just like, it's hard to understand. Like, you've got to be rooting for these guys to fail in order for them to move on and be viable for your opportunity, especially like before the playoff. This is the thing. To really have an opportunity to build a program and to get a head start and not be behind for 2026 soon as possible. So like Kalen DeBoer not making the playoff is preferable, because then it's like the middle of December as opposed to the beginning of December. And I know that sounds like 2 weeks or so, which is worth to wait if you're going to wait.
Right.
But like every day in this situation does matter. And that's why we started talking about Franklin, because that is the immediate threat to your program, is the drain of talent and the drain of what had built Penn State to what it is.
Yeah.
And not necessarily the, the institution as the attractive thing here.
Yeah, and there's also the reality that coaching searches are all about dominoes. And so the first one fell when Virginia Tech was filled by James Franklin, which means he was not going to go to one of the open SEC jobs. The next one that's going to fall is Lane Kiffin. Well, presumably the next one that's going to fall is Lane Kiffin making his decision. And that will tell us what is going to happen at LSU, what is going to happen at Florida, and, of course, what is going to happen at Ole Miss. And Auburn, I guess, in that conversation as well. So you also had the dominoes of a Matt Rule contract extension. We heard over the weekend about Texas A&M and Mike Elko agreeing to a new deal. So there's all these little things that have to happen that help set the puzzle piece to, the puzzle to be concluded.
So, Greg, this is the other thing that I don't know how to really have this conversation about. So to me, like, obviously I'm hyper focused on what happens on the field, right? And on recruiting and like the talent of the roster as the attractiveness of the team. If I'm a coach, I want to know, can I win at a place? And when I think, can I win? I think, do I have good players?
Right.
But like the players are temporary no matter where you're going. And so like that's a misplaced understanding on my part. What is attractive about Penn State specifically? And this is not a rhetorical question. This is not me saying Penn State is bad. This is me saying, what is attractive about Penn State above other open programs right now that a coach would say, I'm going to go there and win? Because I'm thinking like Anthony Donko is super talented. They have, a lot of high-level recruits at running back. Their receiver recruiting has turned around. None of that's relevant. And I know the receivers this year aren't good, but like, you know what I'm saying? Matt Otten, if you watch our recruiting show, like the recruits they had gotten recently in this last class, I thought had some talent. The cornerback room has been super stable. None of that applies anymore. So like I have to change my framework on what makes Penn State an attractive program. And I don't know how that, I don't have like the good verbiage for that. I guess, what is the parameter that a coach would be looking for, do you think?
Well, it's depending where they come from, right? And that's, again, what makes this conversation so interesting, is that somebody who would be making a move from a lower-level Power 4 school or a Group of 5, Group of 6, whatever it might be school, may look at the opportunity Penn State has differently than somebody who has been a sitting Power 5 head coach in the SEC or in the ACC, might look at it and say, okay, with the things that I have at my school are close, but they're Penn State is a tier above. And so I think that, when you look at what Penn State can do from a roster building perspective for where it's located, when you look at what James Franklin was able to attract from a not just player talent perspective, but also from a coaching staff perspective, I think that, obviously there's lots for a candidate to like. But I think, not to just keep banging the same drum, but it's all about fit and when that fit comes together. And you might like a lot about Penn State as a candidate, and you might find some things that are a little bit iffy about Penn State as a candidate, T. Frank. But if you're left with a musical chairs game and their chairs are rapidly falling to other people, at some point you might just say, okay, I don't love everything about that opportunity, but I'm going to take it because I want a seat at the table, and then we'll figure it out when we get there. So I just think that, and Penn State can sell its history. It can sell the success that James Franklin has had over the last 11 and a half years and what they've been able to do. And it can sell Pat Kraft's vision with this big, brand new Beaver Stadium renovation coming up in a couple years.
It's that part. Cypher Carbon says a standard of excellence, but a standard of excellence is set by the coach. Like, I understand it's set by the culture and it's set by the administration, but it's upheld by the coach. So, like, this is my problem is, like, to me, that's if I'm a coach, like, let's just say you're trying to hire Coach T. Frank, and obviously I'm not wired the same way, so this is just me trying to work this out in my head. That's a prerequisite. Like, if I'm a great coach, like, I don't care what your standard of excellence is because mine is higher. And so, like, that is a great slogan. But if we're talking brass taxes, like, that's, I think, Greg, what you said of, like, the resources to go hire a Jim Knowles in the offseason and steal him from Ohio State and the willingness to go do that. And the facility upgrades that they've put in. The fact that Aluba Hall is now, I think, officially just for football. Like, they have the dedicated indoor practice facility, the Greenberg complex. Like, these are the things that nobody wanted to listen about over the last 8 years or so. But I do think, like, those are the things that are going to be attractive to the next coach is, like, the resources I have and the aggressiveness of Pat Kraft becomes the attractive element of this of, do I want to work for a guy who's willing to, like a linebacker, run through a wall to try and fix a problem? Because, like, those are the things that are going to get the job done. And obviously, I don't want to, the fact that you can fill a stadium with 110,000 fans is absolute. Like, fans are absolutely a part of this. Yes. They are at the core of this because that's what makes Penn State the most attractive job from, like, the end results of, like, they have built it, they are here. You need to be the ship. You need to be the captain of this ship. It's just, do you have enough fuel to get to where you want to go? And that's money. And we'll see. I think that's just when it comes to, like, this particular conversation. That's why I'm sounding like such an idiot on live YouTube TV. Is like I'm working it out in real time with you guys.
Yeah. Willow in Wyoming, just to clarify something here, the head coach leaving a school no longer triggers an automatic 30-day portal window. So that rule was changed between the time Brent Pry was fired at Virginia Tech and Deshaun Foster was fired at UCLA, and the time that Penn State fired James Franklin. About a week before Penn State fired James Franklin, the NCAA adopted a rule change that meant that UCLA and Virginia Tech were the last schools that had that portal window for their players once their head coach was fired. So just one portal window now, January 2nd to January, whatever. I don't want to throw the wrong date out there, but it's just in January, one portal window now.
I don't blame any of us for getting all this wrong because it changed 3 weeks ago in the middle of the season when we're all busy doing other things.
Yes, so that's the latest on Penn State's coaching search. The Nittany Lions, of course, will eventually hire James Franklin's replacement. But again, I just think that and it's hard. It's very hard, especially at the time of year when you're looking at the rest of the season and you're saying to yourself, okay, well, maybe Penn State's playing for the Pinstripe Bowl, or maybe the Nittany Lions will go to Detroit today after Thanksgiving to play at Ford Field in a game that means a lot different things than it did when they played Michigan State there a couple years ago. So I get it. The coaching search is front and center for many, but Penn State can only play the timeline that it is given, and that timeline is almost certainly going to take it through the end of the regular season, if not into December. T. Frank, any final thoughts?
Nope. I'm good.
All right. Well, let's move ahead to the rest of today's BWI Live. It is Wednesday, November 19th. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle. And on Saturday, if you're ready to see the Nittany Lions in action on Senior Day, Terry Smith says, T. Frank, that 30-plus seniors are going to be honored. I'll be curious to see who those guys are. We'll get that list a little bit later this week. I count like 23 guys who are definitely out of eligibility on the roster, so I'm curious to see who else Penn State honors during pregame festivities on the Senior Day at Beaver Stadium. And if you want to be there, you can get tickets right now with GameTime.co. So Nittany Lions will host Nebraska at 7 p.m., a November night game at Beaver Stadium. And if you want to sit right behind the Nittany Lions bench, if you want to sit anywhere in Beaver Stadium, you can get in right now for as low as $6, T. Frank. You can sit behind the bench of the Nebraska Cornhuskers if you want it for $41. And if you want to use GameTime.co to get in, and we recommend that you do, sign up and use promo code ON3 at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. I love the Game Time app. I use it all the time. I love the view from your seat feature. My most important thing, though, is the all-in pricing feature. Can't go wrong with that. No surprises at checkout. You know when you pick your seats, that's what you're going to pay for them. There's no hidden fees. There's no surprise taxes. You get what you pay for with GameTime.co. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with GameTime. Of course, they have more than just college football tickets, concerts, all kinds of events, sports, and otherwise. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code ON3 on 3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Appreciate them being a sponsor of the BWI Live Show on Wednesday, November 19th. T. Frank, speaking of Wednesday, Penn State back on the practice field this evening. I'm assuming it's. I saw some snow on social media up there this morning. So yeah. I'm gonna guess Penn State will be working out inside Haluba Hall. You're gonna be over there. We'll have complete updates at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com about what you guys see over there before Terry Smith holds his last news conference of Nebraska week. We have a lot to get to in the last half hour here, unsurprisingly. So practice wise, I know it's been a little bit condensed when you guys have been over there the last couple of weeks as Penn State continues to work through the Terry Smith era. But, you know, I see it in the chat, so obviously you guys will check out if Chaz Coleman is there and practicing. Penn State hoped to have him back last week. He was not able to do so. Beyond that, anything you're curious about?
No. Like at this point, like the things that we've seen, things are both more obscured and more obvious with Terry Smith. So like they tried to at least hide the quarterback situation for the first couple of weeks with Jackson Smolik. That's over now. We know that Liam Clifford is the emergency quarterback, and they don't have another quarterback. It's also clear that the last couple of weeks they didn't want to use the lion cat, wild lion.
Lion cat. Yep, you nailed it, buddy. Lion cat.
Yeah, no. I refuse. I refuse to say lion cat seriously. The Thundercat package. They haven't used that a whole lot. They use it like once or twice. And then they've shown more in the passing game in terms of what they're working on. They have not been able to hide that when they were installing things, but now they've gone right back to what they were doing previously, which is not showing a whole lot in practice. There's still things that I pick up, by the way. There's still things that I've observed over my time in the 10 minutes we have in the building. I even incorporate those sometimes into my film study. Like this past week, I was watching Trace McSorley give the read signals for the quarterbacks in their option handoff stuff, and like just some of my observations about how they do it in the drill and then how it actually happens in real life. And how it happens on the field. And some interesting observations. They're not facts in terms of like hard news, but it's just, I think it's the fabric of what makes the game go and why there are some problems maybe. So you can check those out and check out information this tonight at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com.
Yep, no doubt about it, T. Frank. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to hearing from Terry Smith and what he has to say about the Nittany Lions as they get ready for this matchup with the Cornhuskers. Penn State, again, like I said, will be on the practice field tonight. We'll have complete illustrated at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Yeah, that's fair. We can detour there for a second. Z-Man says, Katron closing in on the rushing record. I'm not sure if that was a conversation in the chat or if Z-Man's just pointing that out.
He just brought it up. Yeah.
So certainly not something that will impact practice tonight. But yeah, there are some records coming here for Penn State. Talking to Nick Singleton yesterday, T. Frank, about his pursuit of Saquon Barkley's career touchdowns mark. Obviously, Katron Allen is now closer than Nick Singleton to Evan Royster's career rushing yards mark. But yeah, certainly as we transition into the second half of the show, those are two things to keep an eye on this weekend, and we'll talk more about them when we get to the Penn State-Nebraska preview. But I don't know about you. Yep. I sense a lot of running this weekend at Beaver Stadium.
Yeah, it's a good defense. I know everyone wants to dunk on Nebraska because John Butler is their defensive coordinator, but like,
right.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it later. But yeah, they're gonna need to run the ball to win this game, and I think. Just as a teaser for later, the rushing stats maybe are a little skewed based on their performance, but they are they also are what they are. So we'll see.
All right. Well, should we do some best bets, T. Frank?
That's up to you. You got them. I'm ready to go.
I got them. Let's do it. It's time for best bets from BetMGM. All right, our best bet segment powered by BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. If your bet loses, just make sure you use bonus code ON3 when you sign up. Make this college football season one for the history books. Make it legendary. Someone in Timothy in the chat says plus 200 on Terry Smith crying at tonight's news conference. I would take the opposite side of that bet. I think he's probably done crying at this point. So I am not.
No.
You on the same side as me, T. Frank, with that one?
Absolutely, yeah. Like that. That's not in the cards tonight whatsoever.
All right, 3 best bets here. I just need to pull up my handy BetMGM app, which is awesome, by the way. If you haven't used it, definitely check it out on your mobile device. It is awesome, easy to use, easy to search, easy to function. I want to make sure my first bet is going to be Notre Dame Syracuse. I just want to make sure I have the most current number there. It's been a bit of a busy morning, but Notre Dame and Syracuse meet at 3:30 p.m. The Fighting Irish are a 35.5-point favorite over Marcus Freeman's Fighting Irish over Fran Brown's Orange. But I'm going to the total 50.5. I think Notre Dame gets to 50 by itself in this game. I know that there's times when the Notre Dame offense maybe has not looked as crisp as they would hope this season, but I think they get to 50 themselves. So I just need a little bit of help from Syracuse in this contest. So I'm taking the over 50.5 in Notre Dame Syracuse at BetMGM.
Sounds good to me. What's next?
All right, moving on to another game in the Power 4 level, but looking at Texas and Arkansas. That game jumped off the screen to me, too, while checking out the BetMGM app this morning. I'm just going to pull up to make sure I have the current line there as well. Yeah, Texas, 9.5-point favorite over Arkansas. To me, I think the Longhorns win this game by double digits. I think that they're probably a little sick of being beat up. A lot of teams are being beat up right now in the aftermath of Tuesday night's college football playoff rankings, which, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but T. Frank, but Penn State got a bit of a shout out there, propping up the new selection committee chair who was forced into this role because the former one stepped down for personal reasons from Baylor. So it's Hunter Udacek now from Arkansas. And he talked about, Penn State being a good win for Oregon, despite the fact that Penn State is now where it is in this season. That has drawn a lot of attention this morning. He noted that Indiana came to Penn State and won in overtime. And he was, I think, using that as a way to prop up the Oregon win over Penn State earlier in the year. I'm not 100% sure, but Penn State still in that part of the college football playoff conversation. But yeah, so Texas, I think they win this game by double digits, so I will lay the 9.5 and take them to beat Arkansas by 10 points or more. And then, as always,
so Arkansas is not going to get the fighting for the fired coach bump. They're not fighting for the interim coach anymore. That's over.
Might be. Yeah, no, they might be. I just think that I think Texas just has a little bit too much talent in this contest. So we'll see. And then last but not least, and this will lead us into our Penn State Nebraska talk, but Penn State is currently, let's just double check this one too. This line opened Penn State minus 10.5. And I thought that was a little bit high. It dropped pretty quickly to Penn State minus 10 for Saturday's matchup with Nebraska. I apologize for looking down at my phone, but if you're on the podcast feed, we appreciate you, and you have no idea that I'm doing that anyway. Penn State at BetMGM is currently a 9.5-point favorite with a total of 44.5. T. Frank, I like the points here with Nebraska, and we can talk more about why during our breakdown of the game, but it just feels a little high to me. Feels too many. I was expecting something in the, 4 to 7 range, and so now we're approaching 10, and it just feels like a few too many. But what are your initial thoughts about the point spread before we get into the actual X's and O's themselves?
So Penn State's favored by a touchdown at home, basically.
They're favored by 9.5, yeah. So almost a touchdown field goal.
Home field is like a field goal, right? So
that's fair. Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yep. So that's too much. I think that's far too much. I would say that this is way closer to basically home field is it, or a pick'em game. I would say maybe I don't see that. I don't see Penn State being a touchdown favorite at home.
Yeah, so according to BetMGM, 66% of the current bets are on Nebraska plus 9.5. So those folks are on the same side as me with Nebraska plus 9.5. So that's going to do it for this segment of Best Bets from BetMGM. We will talk a little bit more about Penn State, Nebraska right after this.
See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer now for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are not withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossings Casino and Hotel.
All right, thanks to BetMGM. And now let's dive into what everyone's been waiting 40 minutes for. 20 minutes now of just Penn State talk, Penn State, Nebraska talk, of course. This game is not what we thought it was going to be back in the preseason, T. Frank. The Nittany Lions no longer with Drew Aller as their starting quarterback. Nebraska no longer with Dylan Raiola as its starting quarterback. He, of course, I think broken fibula, if I remember. Or maybe it was tibia. I can't remember. Definitely a broken bone that has him sidelined. So both teams playing with their backup quarterback. Nebraska's TJ Lateef had his first start 2 weeks ago before Nebraska's bye week and won 28-21 at UCLA. Ethan Gronkmeyer, of course, going into his latest start for the Nittany Lions. Nebraska does come to town with Lions letterman Matt Rule, who just signed a contract extension with them not too long ago off a bye week. Penn State, of course, off of its first win to end a 6-game losing streak, beating Michigan State out there last weekend. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the Penn State offense versus the Nebraska defense and vice versa. But, T. Frank, when you turned the film on, when you sat down to break this game down, what was your initial thought? I'll give you mine after I hear yours.
Yeah, I was expecting a bad team based on the way everyone's talked about Nebraska, and I think that there's a lot of Penn State bias of clowning Matt Rule because they don't want him. Like, certain part of the fan base doesn't want him to be the head coach. So, like, there is an amount of, like, this is a dumb team and Nebraska isn't actually that good, and maybe they're not, college football playoff push sort of good, but they're a good football team. Like, this is a good football team on both sides of the ball. There's nothing that stands out about them, though. So there is no defining trait. It's a collection of things that work well for them. And they've had a bit of a soft schedule since they lost to Michigan. So there are some aspects of it where I understand the skepticism and not believing the record, losing to USC and Michigan as like your two toughest games, and then losing another game there to Minnesota to really kind of tank the season and their hopes for what they could have had. I understand that aspect of Nebraska isn't what we thought preseason the way same thing about Penn State. Yeah. But when we're comparing Penn State to Nebraska, these two teams and how they'll match up on the field, Nebraska is a good team. Like, they are going to challenge Penn State in every part of the field, in terms of the offense and defense, offensive line, linebackers, corners. So that's what I'm saying. Like, when I hear that Penn State's got like a 10.5 point advantage, I could be wrong. Like, there could be something about this particular matchup that Penn State's offensive line can just steamroll Nebraska's defensive line and their unit, their front seven, and Katron Allen gets 200 yards, breaks the record, everyone gets to dance in the streets. I don't necessarily see that as a foregone conclusion watching the film.
That's where I came out with this, too. I think I can see a fairly simple Penn State path to victory. I just don't know if it's as simple as it will be as simple as it looks like it could be on paper. Mr. Sip asks, is Nebraska still ranked? No, they got 13 votes in this week's Associated Press top 25, but they are not ranked in that or the college football playoff top 25. But yeah, when I looked at this game, T. Frank, and I guess let's start with just a quick overall thought. Let's start with this. Let's start with a look at the offenses, if that's okay with you. These are two of the slower teams in the country. Nebraska, from a plays per game perspective, a few more than Penn State. But by and large, I think my initial impression was that both teams would be happy if this was a game like Penn State had a drive of in the fourth quarter at Michigan State. 13 plays, 76 yards. Run the ball, eat clock, so on and so forth. So I can see this game being short on possessions, which is another reason I like the points with Nebraska, because a lot of times when that's the case, you have a hard time seeing either team getting enough possessions to blow the other one out.
Yeah, and it's an interesting situation since Dylan Raiola went down. Their plan has been basically the exact same as Penn State's with Ethan Gronkmeyer. It has been run the ball, RPO, play action, and not really giving him a ton of downfield throws or opening up the passing game. It's interesting, Greg, you mentioned that like they are an offense that is very methodical and plotting and wants to take the time of possession. That was complemented by a guy like Dylan Raiola, who was aggressive and wanted to throw the ball down the field. Trying to understand the offense, how it is now versus what it was before, and watching some of the older film to get a sense of the rest of the offense and what they wanted to do throughout the full season has been a little complex, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Also having that bye week, I wonder if they're going to be able to dive into, kind of like Penn State did, some of TJ Latif's strengths, as opposed to having the offense of, he's going to operate the parts of the offense he could operate previously, not the full thing that was built for Dylan Raiola. So what do they look like now? There is an air of mystery in this game for what Nebraska is going to do on Saturday, because they have a backup quarterback and they had a week to re-engineer some things. And as we saw for Penn State, it's a progressive thing. You can't do it all in 1 week, but they have had 3 weeks now to kind of change what they want out of this offense. And I think that's going to focus more on his running ability. I mean, that's the number one thing I think that they should lean into, is his athleticism and the read option. I'll say this again for some of our people that misinterpret me. I have gone from my understanding of football in terms of what is right and wrong, of like black and white, of these are good ideas, these are bad ideas, right? And so you never want to do the bad ideas. I have tried to come to a more realistic understanding of football of bad teams need bad solutions because they can't do the good things. So they're not going to be able to, maybe they can. Maybe Latif got more comfortable this week and they can throw the football down the field. But bad teams need answers. And so when you don't have the passing game, you need to lean into things that can work, and that is the run game. I would never, like, it would make me puke in my mouth if I were a coach having to lean into those things, but in order to win, I would probably do it too. So I think that's, just keeping an eye on some of those tweaks that they may have made to the offense. That's an area that I think they're still unknown with them. We know more about Penn State's plan with Ethan Grunkmeyer because we've seen it for a little bit longer.
Yes, and so I think that can work in the favor of the Penn State defense, but also the Penn State defense, and I think it's been better. Terry Smith talked yesterday about bringing the Prowler back and the Prowler package back and getting more of a pass rush, which has been obvious. Helps when you play one of the nation's worst offensive lines, I might add, with Michigan State. But, the key is going to be the Nebraska quarterback's going to run. And is Penn State mostly done with its issues of stopping running quarterbacks, or is that going to rear its ugly head?
Yeah, and so I start with the basic question of, is the offensive line good or bad in the relative sense of Big Ten and the relative sense of college football? And this is a decent offensive line. The thing they do pretty well is pass protect. Yeah. Also, Dylan Raiola made up for a lot of sins being elusive, and then TJ Latif does the same thing. So there is an element of like, they're fine. I don't see any massive weak links, and that's kind of what you want with an offensive line. They run block hard. I think they're okay. They're not great run blockers. So you're going to be put in a situation where you're not going to get easy pressures. There's not a Michigan State game planned this week where you just get to win because you have guys that are going to play in the NFL, no matter where they're drafted, like a Denai Dennis Sutton, up against guys that are not going to play in the NFL. And so like you don't have that massive advantage this week. The Prowler package, and my concern with that is the aggression and the blitzing. Yeah. If you get too far upfield, that's when you get athletic quarterbacks out in space. And so the Keon Wiley is going to be a critical player in this game because he's been the quarterback spy, and his instincts for that have been okay. They haven't been great. He's missed some big plays, but he's gotten better. And so I think this is going to be the test of that, because they haven't seen an athletic quarterback in the same way that they did early in the year since, I wouldn't even say the Iowa game, right? So that was just a quarterback who ran, not a quarterback who you want running a lot. So this is going to be a big test for that, to see if they've actually fixed those quarterback spy issues, because non-athletic quarterbacks have been getting out on them. So that's a deciding factor in this game, is how they corral the quarterback in the backfield.
Yes, and so Penn State, again, very good with that. Even back to Indiana. Now, obviously, on the Hoosiers' final drive, it wasn't good enough, T. Frank. We all obviously know that. Even though they hit Indiana's quarterback a couple of times on that Hoosiers game-winning drive, it wasn't good enough. It did turn out to be good enough at Michigan State. Obviously, the Spartans are not the Hoosiers. And the Cornhuskers are not the Hoosiers either. But, it's interesting. And I'm sorry, we're just kind of going all over the place here. But, hey, that's what happens when we do the show an hour late and just have a little bit of this, a little bit of that going on.
I like it.
Nebraska's pass defense, number 3 in the country. It is number 92 against the run. So that's another reason why we're talking so much, not just because of what Penn State does when it runs the ball a lot, but do you think Andy Kotelnicki will be able to still get this passing game going? Because I think the biggest fear of Penn State fans, at least a couple I've had a chance to talk to this week, when it comes to deciding this game, is they're a little concerned Nebraska's just going to say, you know what, our run defense isn't that good, but we're going to put 8 to 9 guys, 8 guys in the box, and say, okay, Ethan Grunkmeyer, go ahead and try and pass against our number 3 pass defense. So how do you think that battle plays out between Andy Kotelnicki and former Penn State coordinator, current Nebraska defense coordinator, John Butler?
So this is an interesting defense. Some of the things I've learned about the defense is they were not happy at the simplicity of John Butler's defense.
Yeah.
So they worked to make it more complex. And that's the personality of the defense, is just make this more complex. And so I don't feel like they stumbled into something here, I think is what I've seen. Is this defense doesn't have a belief system. It doesn't have a personality necessarily. So it's a very confusing one to try and understand. There's not a common through line between their secondary and their defensive front. I do see what they're trying to do up front, and I think that's where I want to start too, because the defensive front and the way they defend the run is through chaos, kind of like the Indiana defense, but not necessarily as well thought out or as meticulous or as aggressive. Like it's in that family. They like to look like they're doing a lot of things, but they're actually not doing a lot of things. So they'll run a 3-3 stack, meaning they got 3 defensive linemen and then 3 linebackers directly behind them. But they almost never actually run that defense. What they do is they stunt in and out of that, and they make it look like one thing, and then they go to another. They do play a lot of fronts, though. So they'll play odd, even, under, over, all of it. Like they've got, I say if you run 10% of your plays in a certain front, that is a core part of your defense, and they have 5 of those. So again, that's in the Indiana mold of we're going to do a lot of everything. And so Penn State's offensive line did a better job against Indiana in that circumstance. Can they replicate that against Nebraska, where Nebraska is going to make more mistakes, but those mistakes are also going to cause Penn State to make mistakes? They're so far out of position sometimes that it's actually working to their advantage. And that's been the problem with them. And so I think there's an opportunity there for either thing. I truly don't know in this situation if Penn State's offensive line that's been so inconsistent, if they have really found their consistency, because as much as I want to say we learned some stuff about Penn State last week against Michigan State, it's a bad team, and this is not a bad team. So you can't play one-dimensional football, which leads us back to then the conversation about the secondary, where if it's going to be inconsistent up front, and let's just say it's going to be inconsistent, then the passing game has to provide more than they did last week. There is not an opportunity for Ethan Grunkmeyer to just be put on the sideline but still on the field. And they do need to throw some things. And then the secondary, from that perspective, they're good. They're a pretty good unit. But again, I don't see a lot of consistency of philosophy or belief. They run a lot of man coverage, and then they run a lot of 2 high stuff and a lot of 3 high stuff. It's just a lot of stuff. And so I don't know how you break it, right? So I would know how Penn State would attack certain defenses, and maybe this whole kind of amalgamation of, I don't know, we're just doing different things and putting it all together makes them hard to play, or just hard for me, a layman, somebody who isn't an offensive coordinator, to understand the common themes of how you would attack it. And that's up to Andy Kotelnicki to figure that out. And so there is an opportunity that Penn State doesn't score points. I'm not optimistic that they're going to score a lot of points in this game.
Yeah, and I think that what we saw, again, that Michigan State game is, what's the right way to put this? It was 14-10 with 4 minutes to go. Penn State scored 14 points in the final 4 minutes and 32 seconds or whatever it was. But this game was not maybe as successful for the Penn State offense as the final numbers indicate, at least in my mind. But maybe we'll see something different this week that is more sustained success for the offense over 60 minutes of play.
Yeah, I think playing at home. So this is the thing. A lot of people, after I talked about Ethan Grunkmeyer last week and this week, have been like, hey, he's a young guy. lay off. And I'm not saying he's bad. I'm saying that his weaknesses are something that may lead to Penn State losing games against competent teams if he continues to do what he did against Michigan State. Being at home, I think, is a big deal. I think being at home, being comfortable, we're going to see a better version of Ethan Grunkmeyer. He didn't look comfortable in the game, whether it was the wind, whether it was on the road, whatever it was. Dropping the third down snap to start the game, something rattled him. And so if Nebraska can replicate that, and it usually has to do with pressure, Terry Smith said that he's got to stand strong in the pocket a little bit better when he's getting blitzed or when there's pressure. And really, it's when he's getting pressured, he had 10 attempts and just 2 passes. So, like, blitzing him is a great way to get him to not throw the football or to not be accurate with the football. So that is something that Nebraska does sometimes and not all the time. Do they dial that up this week? Because and I feel like I'm rambling. I apologize.
Okay.
The nature of their defense that comes from all these different angles, right? So they run an odd front, they run an even front, they've got linebackers and safeties dipping in and out of the box. That's the stuff that's going to confuse Ethan Grunkmeyer. Like, that's the stuff that teams have been doing to make him uncomfortable. So do they lean into that this week, or was it really just on the road against Michigan State in that night, that evening environment that really was what rattled him? So that, to me, that's the other big factor. Penn State containing Latif in the pocket, and then what Nebraska can do against Penn State and Ethan Grunkmeyer to make him uncomfortable at home.
Yeah. So spoiler alert for me, because I won't be with you for tomorrow's Thursday show with predictions and also whatever you guys manage to talk about recruiting on tomorrow's BWI Live Show. But I am going to pick Penn State to win this game, but I agree with you. Like, I see this comment in the chat. Penn State should beat Nebraska if Penn State can score 21.
I think they need more than that.
I don't, actually.
No?
Not that my predictions have been any good this year, so keep that in mind. But I think that they can get this done with actually 21 points. So I'll just keep teasing away my prediction until I give it away. It's like if you watched any I know we're on a football show here, but if you watched Cale Sanderson's Media Day press conference here on the BWI YouTube channel last week, he said in the beginning that he was not going to give away any hints about his starting lineup decisions and roster. And then by the end of it, he just kept getting poked enough that he just started giving away everything. So I'm doing that here with my prediction.
Timothy says, isn't the 3-3-5 a common defense in the Big 12? Shouldn't Andy know how to attack the defense? That's my point, is they look like they're running a 3-3-5. They want you to think they're running a 3-3-5, and they're not. Like, for the most part, they're not actually in that alignment post-snap. So it's the illusion of complexity a lot of times more than it is actually complexity. And that's my criticism of the defense, is like, at times they're doing a lot of stuff to the point that even the players in the defense don't know what's going on. Like, they bust run gaps because they're all over the place. They're shifting before the snap. They're trying to give you too many different looks, trying to disguise too many different things, and they're not just lining up and playing in their gaps. And because they're trying to have these guys kind of be fluid between a 4-down front and a 3-down front, you got guys that are, the tweeners that aren't really doing what they need to be doing on a certain play. And so, yeah, if it were a Big 12 defense, sure, but I don't think it's not a Big 12 defense. It's not a Big 10 defense. It's just the Nebraska defense. That's what I'm trying to say, is like, it's weird. I study a lot of defenses during the year. I'd say I'm stronger on that side of the ball of understanding concepts and kind of philosophies. And I looked at this, I'm like, I don't understand. I didn't like it because I don't get it. But the more I watched it against some of these teams that are on Penn State's level, like not the top teams, it has been effective. And so against a young quarterback, where was it? JC asks, which unit is like most likely to be inconsistent? Penn State offense, Penn State defense, Nebraska offense, or Nebraska defense? I'd say, Greg, I'm going to go with the Penn State offense here. What do you think?
So my prediction is it's one of those two, either the Penn State offense or the Nebraska defense, and whichever one is the answer will be the winner of this game. Yeah, I mean, the Penn State offense When we say inconsistent, I guess the question is, what are we saying? Penn State could very well be consistent to its game plan of last week and just try and run and run and run and run and run and some more against the nation's 91st or 92nd ranked run defense and try to not put Ethan Runkemeyer in any real dangerous spots. And then it could be consistent with its approach and maybe inconsistent with its play. I think in Nebraska's defense could just be inconsistent with all of it. And I'm with you. Like, I couldn't quite get a grasp on the whole, like, if there was too much of, like, it almost looked like it was too many ingredients in what they were trying to do on defense. But to your point, especially against UCLA last week, it worked in the sense that it got accomplished what needed to get accomplished to keep enough points off the board to win the game with a backup quarterback.
Yeah. And they're again, there's a lot of Nico Iamaleava just being a 5-star quarterback in that game plan.
Right.
Being able to run, extend drives, be explosive outside of structure. The in-structure stuff, I don't think UCLA had a ton of success.
Right.
And part of this is like, when this late in the season, like, you're kind of speed running a lot of different game plans, a lot of different varieties. So there's less of a clear picture than there is maybe early in the year, despite having more film. That and, like, everyone's a little bit burnt out and, like, my eyes just aren't as fresh as they were at the beginning of the year. But I think Nebraska's defense is consistent. They're even consistent in their inconsistency. And the offense under Latif has been pretty basic. It's been like the same thing. It's been run the ball, control the ball with the run game. They add in the quarterback run, and then some RPOs and play action off of that. So that seems pretty stable. So Penn State is the volatile chemical in this. They could, show up with better talent, and I think Penn State's offensive line has not first round draft picks, but like NFL players on it, right? I think those players are talented. The running backs are talented. Nebraska's running back is talented. He's like if you gave Katron Allen Nick Singleton's body type. And so, like, you get somewhere in between of the two. He's athletic. He's able to break tackles. He's the reason their offensive run game is as good as it is. The offensive line is not necessarily giving him gigantic holes. So it feels like there's some pushes across the board where Penn State has more talent, but has been more inconsistent this year. So, that's I don't have a good, like, you have your prediction ready. I'm still thinking about mine. I don't know who I think is going to win this game.
Yeah, well, I'll just give it away. I got it Penn State 24, Nebraska 20. I don't love the pick. I told our colleague Ryan Snyder, who compiles these for us at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, that don't keep me to it because I might change my pick, and I still might. So I might have one here on the Wednesday edition of BWI Live and one on the BlueWhiteIllustrated.com website Thursday morning.
Now you know how to do it.
See? That's right. It only took me, 10 games to figure it out, but I finally got to the bottom of it. T. Frank, we've covered a lot of ground on this edition of the show. We've made some people upset. We've talked about some coaching stuff. We've got into the Penn State-Nebraska game. And obviously, we promote the fact that tonight, Penn State is back on the practice field. BWI will have complete coverage, including notes on BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, and also Terry Smith's full news conference video here at the conclusion of it a little bit later today. So any final thoughts as we wrap up this edition of BWI Live?
No, just check us out and make sure you're here for the post-game show after the game. I'm hoping that the both teams like to control the ball because I'm an old man now, and so a 7 p.m. start time, if they're done by 9:45, I'm not mad at that. Like, if it's a 2 hour and 50-minute game, cool. And we'll have the post-game show live after the game. We'll have the tailgate show at 4 o'clock on Saturday outside the Bryce Jordan Center ticket office, so come say hi if you're going to be in town. Yes. And then Anti-Fragile on Friday afternoon. We go down to our great sponsor, Anti-Fragile Brewing Company, and we hang out so that our fans who love the show want to go support Anti-Fragile. We want to be there to thank you in person and hang out, and so usually early afternoon because I gotta get out and do some things, run some errands, leg day. As I'm now teased for, that I don't skip the gym because I learned through the last 5 football seasons when I do, it doesn't work out for me in the end. So I got to stay going to the gym. But we'll be there in the afternoon. You can buy me a kombucha. I'll buy you a beer.
Alrighty. Well, for anyone going to see T. Frank and the guys on Friday afternoon, enjoy whatever else you have going on this Wednesday, November 19th. It's been another edition of BWI Live. Don't forget, Terry Smith coming up tonight. The guys will be back with a recruiting / whatever else they can find to talk about heading into Penn State, Nebraska show on Thursday. And then T. Frank, you will have some more video content throughout the week here on the BWI YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast. So for Thomas Frank Carr, I'm Greg Pickle. We'll catch you next time. It's been BWI Live. We'll see you then.